again, and welcome back to the Two Old Guys Reselling Podcast. If I'm not mistaken, this is episode 73. And how's it going, Josh?
Going great, man. Just sitting over here living the reselling life, making one sale every 3 days, it feels like.
Oh, I thought that was just me.
No, it goes and comes. I heard this morning, Retro Renewed was watching their little thing this morning. They were talking about how sales have been sluggish for them over the weekend. I was like, well, kind of me too. And that was kind of a change from how it had been for the last, I guess, week or two. And it wasn't from not listing. I didn't list a huge amount of new items, though I was mixing some in, but I've been pulling down one box at a time my clothing inventory and kind of working back through those things, delisting, making edits, changing up some of the pictures, some of the descriptions, just trying to make it more appealing. And so, I've been putting a lot of work into that. And that's technically recognized as new listings when it goes up. Mm-hmm. Pulling anything that needs to be pulled that's just maybe not going to sell, a bad listing that I've left up for too long. So I've been very active on the platform, even doing that, but did not see it reflected in the total number of sales at all.
Me too. Yeah. Well, I did a thing today that I haven't done in a while. I listed today.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah. I listed 15
Give yourself a little encouragement there. Yeah. Yeah. You're probably surprised I can reach my shoulder.
You touch your shoulder blades?
I'm not even going to try. No point.
Can't get there. Yeah, I listed 15 for $675, so not a bad day of listing.
Yeah, it's not bad.
If I can just build on that momentum and keep it going for the next couple of months, I might have a decent fourth quarter. Speaking of fourth quarter, it's fourth quarter. We haven't even really talked about that a whole lot. And I haven't seen, of course, I'm kind of still slow, but I haven't seen any huge spikes. I did have a couple of decent days sales, but it's on me, it's still on me. But I got a lot of updating to cover on the guest house, the eBay house over here. We've gotten rolling on some stuff, and I think last time we talked about what we done on the porch. The porch is basically done. I am waiting on some attachment pieces for the wire railing that goes on the handrails for the new handrails over there. And then let's see what else. I got to put them in, and then I got to stain it. But staining, you need to wait a certain period of time to let the pressure treated stuff kind of settle and dry out. And a lot of that wood was wet. So I'm going to let it dry out. Probably have to wait a month or so. But I also got an estimate on a heating and air unit, and probably going to call them back. Probably go with them because it was pretty fair, and it's a big enough unit to cover. Like, it should be plenty. It's a 30,000 BTU. Like, it should be plenty to cover that guest house and then some. Yeah. So that's probably going to get put in. I don't know how far behind they are, though. So, that's the thing. You just never know how far behind some people are. But anyway, that's coming up. And we underpinned the whole thing except for where the heat and air will be going.
Right.
So that way we can run electric without having to climb under the house from under the porch and getting all nasty.
Did you just use the vertical decking boards like the rest of it had?
Yeah, they're like a cedar fencing cricket board, I think they're called.
Okay, so you didn't use the regular 5/4 treated decking.
No, we used that on the porch, but not on the underpinning. We just went with the fencing boards that are like they're like a 1/4 inch thick.
Yeah, it's that Western cedar stuff.
Yeah. It looks good. It's going to be pretty nice. And then if I decide to insulate underneath, I could probably go under there and just spray those from the back.
Yeah.
And you'd never see it, but it would create. You think you'd see it? Because they're pretty tight.
Well, no, I would just be worried if there's because the way that foam does, if there's any tiny spaces, it's going to find its way through the cracks.
That is true.
That's the only thing I would say. If I were you and I was going to do that, I would drag the kids under there, and like a couple of them. I get a couple of minutes seriously though, and I would probably like tack something up behind it. Add something, just get you a little stapler or something, and I mean, it don't have to be a lot, but I'd probably put something up to make sure it doesn't do that, or have them go under there and take you might even go do it from the outside, take a caulk gun or something, like clear caulk,
Yeah.
and like caulk the seams from the inside, just caulk them all the way down. I mean, you could dig out and cut the pieces, if it did come through, kind of dig those places out. But I think it being like that pink color too, if there's any spaces at all, it's from like pink stripes. That's what I would be afraid of anyway. If I was, it with me. But
Right.
it's not enough
Well,
to worry about it, of course,
do what?
If it fits tight enough, I said, if they're tight enough together, you won't have to worry about it. But
I mean, they're pretty tight, but I couldn't swear that stuff couldn't get through, because there's not like visible cracks. It's tight, but
yeah,
but you are right. That stuff does come through. So what I might do, I had it recommended to me to spray the floor with the foam, not the batting, because that batting stuff on floors is like a moldy nightmare.
Oh yeah,
a lot of places. But if you use the closed foam, the closed cell, they call it closed cell foam.
Mm-hmm.
It's made for like that very thing, like doing a crawl spacing
It's air and moisture barrier when it's closed cell. Yeah.
So I mean, I just have to see, and I think I have decided way back when Scott Chaching King was on with us, we was talking about insulating. I think I've been replaying that in my mind and going over what he said, about if you just do a little homework, you could do it. So I've been doing all that homework, and I've found a pretty good rated product. And I thought about going ahead and investing in the first bunch of it, which would be $200 for like 200 board feet, which isn't enough, obviously.
Yeah.
And do a little section just to see how it's going to go.
Right.
And learn, maybe even take it outside and build a little partial wall and just get my feel for it, and then go to town, because I think I can do that. I don't think that's going to be a terribly hard thing to do, and I think in the long run it's definitely going to be worth it.
Well, one of the things that would help you, other than the mess, it's so messy.
It is messy.
Golly, man, the amount of it stuck to the floor and the walls, and just the overspray inside, outside, it got on everything when they did mine. And I mean, I knew it'd be that way, but still, it's hard to, when you've not been around. I heard Trey talk about it when he worked with the company that done it, my son, but like not having been there and experienced it, firsthand, when you do, it's just like, wow, it really is. That's the drawback. That's the big drawback. But the way yours is set up in your roof, because of the way the beams are so tall, you're not trying to spray between 2x4 trusses and make it look good, that are open. And so, I mean, for you to get 8 inches, you don't have to fill the entire space that's there to get 6 or 8 inches of insulation. Right. And that's the bonus, because you don't have to worry about doing a lot of shaving, doing a lot of stuff like that. You just need to get 2/3 of the space filled, and you're good to go. Right. I mean, and I think that would probably make your job, as far as the doing it yourself part, a little easier. Because like, if you're trying to get 8 inches or so, which is what you got to have to get your R30 value, about 8 inches. If you're trying to get about 8 inches average on like with mine with trusses, then you got to have, you carry a wire or something, you got to be measuring. And if you're not real familiar, you might have places where it's 4 inches thick, places where it's 6, places where it's 8. So I mean, there's an art to that part of it too, watching them work some to get it right. And to be honest, I don't know that I actually got what I was supposed to get in some places either. It's just the way it goes. But that's a lot more challenging. I think with yours, it would definitely be simpler because of the way the ceiling is set up.
Have you ever seen it like back in the day, way back in the day? My mother-in-law's house, it was built, it's probably closing in on 80 or 90 years old, but they went to the outside of the house when they first started doing blown in, sprayed in type insulations and stuff. And they drilled holes in the side, like every, 12 to 18 inches. And they sprayed in. It really looks like ground up newspaper mixed in with some sort of a glue.
Yep.
And her house, man, it's falling down, but it's warm and it's easy to cool. Like, it's just, that stuff was good. But they filled they went in and just filled until it was to max. Yeah. So it's like pouring water in a jar, you get everything.
Right. And that's honestly, they had to use it. You couldn't use, fiberglass, what we're used to, right? Even if it was like the blown in style you can get of that, it's so clingy. If you tried to go through a small hole at the top of the wall, there'd be enough of it catch that you'd have empty space. So it's got to be something more dense that will fall to the bottom. But yeah, that's how all the old houses built, like around here, like in the, that are still standing 30s, 40s, 50s. Most oftentimes they were not insulated at all. The walls were not. And the ones that were, that's how I remember as a kid, a lot of older people that had older houses going back and having them insulated. And that's what they always would do. They would come in, like you said, and they'd drill holes at the top of each wall space and just spray that stuff down in them until it filled up. And, it's not the perfect solution, like on one hand, but at the same time, anytime you start filling up that airspace, you create a barrier, and that's going to definitely improve the ability to heat and cool it. I mean, I've heard stories from when my folks were little, some of the places they lived in, and they could see daylight through the walls. These things we see on these old movies. I mean, I when I would teach the kids, I think sometimes I feel like maybe even for myself, you hear the stories, but being able to really conceptualize that and accept that as being fact and not just some made up exaggeration is sometimes hard. And so you see some of these old movies where, in the spaces, they got magazine pages and newspapers that are kind of covering up the cracks in the walls from the outside, and trying to keep air out. And I'm like, I tell my kids, they really did that. That was the only thing they had. I mean, that's not some exaggeration of, oh, we were so poor, or, we had to walk uphill to school both ways in the snow. I mean, it's that kind of stuff. It wasn't like that. It's not an exaggerated tale. We don't realize how lucky we are, or maybe how blessed we are. I use the word lucky, and I don't really mean it that way. It's not luck, but we are truly blessed. I mean, to have what we have today. I mean, like you said, I'm thankful every morning I get up and the house is like I want it. If I want it warm when it's cold, it's warm. If I want it, cold when it's hot, it's cold. It feels comfortable, and that's a blessing, because they had it rough, buddy.
Oh, absolutely. I've got the same stories, people talking about seeing daylight and rain hitting them, snow, and
oh yeah,
like our kids, enjoy a good, warm, clean home. And it's like, and even growing up, in my day, I don't remember a point in my life growing up that we had central heat and air. We always had a gas stove in the middle of the house. If you wanted to get warm, you went to the middle of the house, and it would be like 80 degrees in there, and the rest of the house would be like 65, and that's just the way it was. And I used to trick my mom. She'd come through to go to work, and I'd be laid out in front of that stove getting warm. And our house was very little. The washer and dryer was in the middle room, which was like a den, but it wasn't, it was just kind of a central hub for all the rest of it. My bedroom was down from it. And then there was a door to the kitchen, a door to the living room, and a bathroom. And that was all contained in that room. And she'd come through there, and I'd be sprawled out. My feet would be touching the washer and dryer. My head would be touching the gun cabinet. And I'd be laid out in front of this stove, and I'd wake up with like burns on my legs where I slept too long in front of the stove.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it'll cook you.
Good times, man.
We had, before my mom and dad, after my middle brother had a car accident when I was, I guess it was in March of 91. So I had just turned 10 in November, the year before. And he had a head injury. And so for like 8 years, my mom and dad took care of him at home after he was out of the hospital. He was never able to do for himself again. And so things changed at that point over time. But up to that point, we were living in a trailer up until until I was 16, 17. We lived in, I think about 16. We had a double wide trailer. It's what mom and dad had bought when he got out of the military. They'd had houses up in this area a couple of times and sold them, and, had lived all over. They lived in Norfolk and lived in Charleston and lived in Boston, lived in Orlando, and had houses in those places, but they had bought land, and dad had always wanted to build a house. And he thought that was going to be really high and fast on the agenda, like a lot of people, and then he got the trailer moved in there, and we moved in that after he got out of the Navy in 1981. I was a year old, and my mom had moved up in 1980 after I was born, and then waited on him to finish up his time. But he came back, went to work, public job, and never got around to, building the house quickly. He was working on plans, had everything kind of in motion, what he wanted to do. And then Daniel had his accident. And, it's one of those things that kind of stalled and changed the plans a little bit. But I said all that for this. when we were there, like our heat was just the gas furnace. Now, I did have the gas furnace, and so in the wintertime we would use that, and it was good and warm. It was good, really good warm heat, but it also was problematic. I mean, it was old.
Mm-hmm.
And then we never had air. We didn't have any kind of air conditioning at all. We didn't get the first air conditioning we got. My uncle, after Daniel came home, and was living at home after he'd been there for a while. When it got close to summertime, my uncle got us a window unit to put in the area of the house where his bed and all his stuff was, hospital bed, and all of his equipment and stuff like that, to keep that part of the trailer cooler, And so we would use it, on the hotter days and just to kind of keep it cooled off in that area for him. But if anybody, everybody knows this, I mean, it was a double wide trailer. If you're in a trailer in, South Alabama in the summertime, and all you got is a medium-sized window unit, on the hot days, it's just going to run wide open. It's still going to be hot.
Yep.
So, best it can do. That's just reality. That's how it works. But that was a big deal to me, because I could go out, and play or whatever, get real hot, come in, and kind of like you with the heat, I would take me a chair, because, we'd never had air conditioning before that. And I'd park that chair right in front of it, stick my face right in front of the vent, because the air coming out of it was cold, even if the house wasn't real cool, So I just get right in front of it and just let it blow my eyeballs shut, just dry them out and be like, I don't care, I'm going to cool off. But, so I remember that. But when they did build the house that I finished the last 2 or 3 years before I was in college, where we lived, to try to accommodate for Daniel better, my brother moved in to help with him. And, we didn't know how long it would be. We assumed, because he's in great health, we assumed that he would be with us a very long time, and wound up, he passed away at 26 when I was a senior, starting my senior year in high school. But anyway, they built a house, and it's a fairly large 2-story house, and we sawed the lumber for it, did 80% of the work ourselves or better. I mean, dug the footer by hand. I mean, stuff like that. That's what we did. Pick and shovel. Yeah, he wasn't paying nobody to do anything he didn't have to pay for. He's had me, and he said that was good.
Wow.
That's what I said. Send them kids under there. But yeah, we moved into that though, Caleb, and we didn't have central air again for years. He put a big fan up in the attic, and it wasn't like one of those you go buy. He took a fan out of a big, like a big squirrel cage fan out of an old system, and he mounted it up, ran his own wiring to it, hooked it up, blowing out at the attic. And then we had a couple of other window fans. And so in the summertime, it was warm upstairs. Now it really was, until it got about midnight or so. But we just cracked windows about 2 or 3 inches all in the house. And it was like having, on the lower level, it was like having air conditioning pretty much. I mean, it was always about 75 to 78 degrees. It wasn't 68 like some people like to keep it nowadays.
Yeah.
But it was comfortable, considering it was 95 degrees outside. It was always comfortable, and it was amazing. So that's what we used for a long time after we moved in up there. He wasn't about paying Alabama Power more money than he had to.
Well, I'm all about that too. I wish I didn't have to pay anybody anything for that stuff, because it's too much.
Oh man, it's got so bad now. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. It is crazy. But yeah, all that said, we're here. We're starting to make some progress towards our eBay space over there. I told Tanya the other day, I said, if we could just get this wiring finished, which I have something in the works on that too now. I don't know for sure yet, but anyway, if we could just get the wiring finished and get it insulated and that heat and air installed, we could work through the winter. It don't have to be pretty right now, it don't have to be finished like part of the home right now, sheetrock, flooring, paint, and all that stuff. It just need it to be workable, where I can throw in a couple outlets, have a couple of lights on it, just where I can do what I need to do. So that's what we're attempting to get done. And I'm going to tell you, this morning I walked out there to pack. I had a few things packed already, but I went out there to pack the last 3 or 4, and just walking down the porch, walking through that little cut open, and going right in. It's like, oh man, don't take this for granted. Don't take this for granted, because it wasn't like this, a month ago, where you had to walk through the building and climb up on this thing. So I'm thankful and appreciative that it's as far along as it is now. It's
I just want to pause at this moment in the show and let everybody know how proud I am of Caleb. He's becoming a real reseller now. He's doing his own picture taking. his own listings from start to finish. He's even packing for himself now.
You're wrong about the picture taking part.
Oh, you give it back over?
No, we're going to hire Bailey to do that.
Oh my goodness.
Well, we are. We really are.
God bless him.
See her. Yeah.
But no, you have been though. You've been doing it all. I mean, I know, and I know it's been an adjustment for you. I'm just picking at you, adjustment for y'all, period. But with Tanya's new job and moving in the midst of all that, everything that's going on, we had to meet up, and me and Casey were actually talking about this and about, you know, it's not like it's something we can't do, but when you get kind of used to a pattern and you've lost your space, and then everything that was your routine has also been turned upside down. It is, man. It's hard. I was really feeling bad for you over this last, because it's hard to figure out, okay, where do you start in terms of going forward, you know? So I'm glad to see you kind of getting your feet back under you, because I know it feels good. I know it's really discouraging when you don't feel like you're making any forward progress on your work. You know, I mean, as much as I kid about it. So I was glad to hear, you know, that kind of things are kind of starting to move in a positive direction for you there, because it helps motivate you to do more when you feel it kind of moving in the right direction again. That's very motivating.
It helps. And I've got gravel coming probably in the morning.
Doing it all, man.
Well, I'm trying to keep the jobs that are getting done away from each other. So like, you know, the HVAC, I done told them whenever y'all start, if I agree to their price or whatever, I won't have anybody else doing anything until you're done. That way you ain't working over anybody.
Yeah.
So we done all the underpinning ourselves, and, you know, all the decking, and literally we could probably have that underpinning done in another hour. It's really not that bad. It's, you know, like 20 pieces of board screwed up and it's done. But before I can say I'm finished with that, I've decided to build the access door for underneath that house under the porch, so you don't see it. Nobody ever notices it. It'll just be connected to the deck. But so then I've got a underpin under there to keep the air from getting under the porch and getting up and under, you know, just stuff I didn't really think about. But that'll be all right. I don't think that'll be too hard. I could probably just take some plywood or something if I had to and do it under there and seal it.
I do have a question. Are you going to go back and, I mean, assuming you don't do, I just don't know if you thought about this, if it'd have some airflow simply because it's boards. I realize that, even though it looks tight, but you know, I just didn't know if you thought about that. If you don't end up doing the spray foam underneath, you might want to think about going back and at least maybe 2 or 3 on each side, cutting out and putting a few vents in, just for more, for more free flow, because you don't want extra humidity and moisture building under there. It can cause a lot of problems too for your floor, and over time it takes a while, but it does. And there's so much water coming off the hill there, you know, it's gonna have water running under and keeping it damp from time to time.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
I've been working on the ground too, getting that kind of turned away.
Okay.
I've had my chiller out. I've been wearing it out. I've been so tired.
So you're going to be able to get the water coming off the roof away from it too, keep it from running back?
Not all of it, no.
So that's your biggest, that's going to be your other issue, is keeping that. That's where I've had trouble at my house. When
I get the gutters installed, I've been looking at it. So you have a roof line up here and then one down here that's going to have a connection. And then you'll have your downspout at the back. That I'm going to go through the underpinning and run a drain line to the other corner on the front. And the gutter on that side will be there. And then the gutter on the front will come down and meet that drain line. So all 3 points of water will come down that pipe and out the front corner down the hill, away from the building. So the only water I think I'll have trouble with, because like I said, I've been turning the ground. I've been kind of making myself a little bit of a funnel slope where it can kind of go around. You know, I know it ain't perfect, but it'll kind of help keep some of that water away. The only water I should really have a lot of problem is the water that comes through the 2 gutters. It's about a 6-inch opening. It won't be a ton, but it will be a little. So I will have some water from time to time. You know, I think most of that will probably get naturally absorbed into the ground before it'll hurt a whole lot.
You're talking about overflow when it's a hard drain, right?
Well, I'm just talking about, you know, here's a gutter. They don't touch. There's about a 6-inch opening. So a little bit of rain's going to get through there. Gotcha. It's not going to be like, I mean, if it rains really hard, it could be significant. But I was thinking about what we was talking about too, like building some kind of connection. The one roof line is above the other. in the future, in the coming years, if I decided to, I could just extend that one roof line by a foot and it would overhang this one and come down into that gutter, so
The only thing you have to really be careful about, if it's just standard gutter size, especially, it's just real easy to you know what I mean?
it is.
You'd want to do your calculations on the amount of square footage of rain that you're, between the two roof lines that you're actually trying to funnel in on an average rainfall to get an idea to make sure that your capacity is not going to be, because you're not solving anything if every time you get a medium, medium volume rain, if it's overflowing the gutter, because that's just going to, that's in best case scenario when the gutters are functioning at 100% capacity, which most of us, between gravel and leaves, and you know how it is. I mean, there's always going to be things that hinder that to a degree.
Mine's already full of leaves. Oh my goodness, I've got to get, when I get the gutter guys out here, I'm going to have them clean the home gutters. Yeah. Put me up gutters over here, put me gutter guards, and clean these, and then put me gutter guards on these. Yeah. That way, and where we live, I'm sure it's probably similar to where you're at. Pollen is horrible. So we can't do the screen. If you do the screen, it gets clogged up and it don't work.
Yeah.
So the guy I use, he uses a piece of sheet metal that's got holes drilled in it. And he said the only problem with it is some of the leaf stems will get in the hole. He said they won't really block anything, but they will get stuck sometimes. But a lot of times they'll blow off. So that's what you have to live with, because in our area, these fancy rolled metal edge gutter guards don't cut it.
No.
We get too much rain for that stuff.
Yep.
It'll just spill right off the edge. But man, a lot of home improvement on this show.
Tool time. Yeah. Bob
Wheeler. Kind of look like Al, that was his name, right? Al Borland. Was that his name on the show?
I don't know how I feel about that.
You got the beard.
Yeah.
And he was kind of a shorter guy. And I don't look like Tim.
Of course, you'd find a way to work that in,
Tim was clean shaven. He was funny. Handsome guy, I guess
you're right. You don't really have a lot in common with him.
He had his hair. His hair wasn't gray yet.
Oh man, that was a good show. I enjoyed that when I was a kid. That was one of my favorites. What was it? Home Improvement was the name of it. Wasn't it?
Yeah.
I always think Tool Time because of their little show that they did on the show.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's a great show.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
I love going back and watching stuff like that you hadn't seen in a while.
Yeah.
You remember. Oh yeah, I remember that, and I remember this. Yeah. Fun times.
I don't think so, Tim.
I don't think so. Hey, this is kind of right. You're always telling me, I don't know. Yeah. Quit having these stupid ideas.
I wish I had been ready when you made the short comment. I would have rung my bell, but I'm gonna have to practice about my timing, because that was a good opportunity to cry foul right there.
I messaged her to thank her too. We really appreciate it.
We do. And, Meg's awesome.
She's a sweetheart. Awesome. Yeah,
she really is.
Awesome. And by the way, if you watch this show, I was thinking this week, and I'm glad we come to this point. And you watch the show, but you don't normally comment. Throw a comment out there and say you're watching, because we love to know who's watching us. We know you don't always comment, don't always have time. Just throw it out there and say watching. That way we know you're here.
Thumbs up will work. Just give us an idea.
Yeah, thumbs up.
We'd love to shout some of you out. It may or may not help you, but if you have social media accounts, stores, we'd be glad to shout some of you out if you let us know you're there.
Absolutely. Well, you want to get into a little bit of actual reselling content here?
We can try. It struggle's real.
All right. Well, let's hit us up a comment of the week. How about it?
That works.
Comment of the week. All right. So I went with our good friends, Retro Renewed. You mentioned them earlier.
Yep.
And they said, do what keeps you guys passionate about doing the podcast. Because we was talking about, what would you like to see? And I think that's a very good point. Keep it authentic and real, because it is easy to tell if you're not. And they went on to say, easier to enjoy it as a listener and keeps you wanting to do it. And it can be easily to tell. It can be easy to tell when someone is packing it in. And I agree with that. And I don't want to read their last part of the joke, or the comment, but I guess I will. They said, as for the joke, double loser this week.
Yes. Don't appreciate that.
Yep. Stickers for sale at the eBay site.
No, what we should say is no sticker for you,
Yeah, I got one too.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So
Yeah,
I know I've mentioned mine before recently, but I just thought this is a really good comment. Miss Lachey resells 3853. I might even have used hers last week. I don't know, but I just really liked what she had to say about our topic. And she said, "Is eBay the king of reselling platforms?" Question mark. Which was our question at the start of the show. And she said, overall, my thought is Amazon is the king as far as overall volume and buyers, but eBay is the prince, in my opinion. eBay does beat out Amazon in certain categories, of course. However, there is no one size fits all. If you have it figured out, each platform can do extremely well with certain items, with the exception of Bonanza. Somebody might be doing well over there, but I've never heard of it.
Only Kevin.
Yeah.
He's the
I don't know
only
if you would classify that as well. I think everybody that uses it gets to sell once in a while.
I think he's the only one that sells anything on there at this point. Kevin, Commonwealth Picker, owns Bonanza.
I don't know, man. I'm telling you. But it's one of them things. I guess I've been told several times I should have mine active on there, but I don't, because it's such an easy, it's through eBay. You can set that up, but I just, I kind of like she said, I've not heard anything to really sound. I mean, for one extra sale every month or 2 months, or a couple sales, 2 random ones, and then you don't hear from them for 6 weeks. I mean, I just don't know. It's just another one to have to navigate them when it comes to shipping and stuff like that. I think if I'm gonna do it, it's going to be Poshmark or it's going to be Mercari.
Yeah,
it's going to be stuff like that.
There's some promise. They still have some promise. They're still growing, and the younger generation may make those platforms overtake eBay at some point. Amazon. It just we live off of trends, man.
I do think, I know what she said about they all have. I think each of those platforms probably have their niches. Etsy as well. Home decor on Etsy does really well. There's certain things that just do better. And I think across the board, fee structures and all that are vastly different from one platform to another. And so understanding how to go about your pricing and things like that, there can be a learning curve there. Even though I don't use them, I mean, I've looked at most all of them, but I know there's a learning curve to make sure you're getting the most out of your items. But yeah, I do think there's advantages to them. I've seen it. I just haven't done it, and kind of like you, I definitely don't want to try to do it and manage the accounts myself as far as the cross posting and not getting things, not leaving things up on sites where I don't have it for sale anymore because it's sold on a different platform. So I do know that if and when I do that, then it will be using, like I said last week, it'll be using something like Vendoo, because I don't want to have to worry about has it been delisted. I want to be automatic when it happens.
Oh yeah.
And I think too, if I'm going to put the time in to create anything for cross listing, I would rather create it one time in a software like that and it go out to multiple sites than to just work hard to put it on one extra site. So, I do think there's benefit there. Like I said, I think especially for us everything sellers, I think we probably have a greater capacity. I think if you're only selling clothes, I can see doing just Poshmark because I think it's geared toward clothing resellers. Even though you can sell about anything over there, I think it is geared toward that particular area. So I think there's a benefit there. But I think that's where someone like me, where I've got a third to half of my store at any one time is clothing. I'd probably benefit a lot from having an active Poshmark closet. I'd probably get a lot more sales because those sell on eBay, but they don't sell, I don't think, as well on eBay as now they do on Poshmark. Maybe now they may do a higher volume on. I'm not talking about overall volume. I'm sure there's metrics out there that says eBay sells, bukus more, in terms of just overall number. But when you look at the traffic volume versus sales, I think Poshmark probably comes pretty close. Like I said, I think there's a lot of people go there specifically for clothes. I think that's what, like, you don't go to like the Publix supermarket here looking for blue jeans. That's just not where you go to shop for blue jeans. And
when
I think
Poshmark, I don't think of, I'm going to go find my video games over there.
Exactly. Even though there may be some for sale, right? Yeah. There may be some for sale. But the reality is it has established itself as being like a primary thought for people that shop online. I go there to look for clothes because I got a good selection of clothing. And so like I said, I'm not trying to talk Poshmark up, just saying, I think because of that, they've established themselves, some of these platforms. and it definitely has the ability to help. I'm excited about being able to make that transition when I have time. I just know that for me, it's been hard to figure out how to work that in with the other 25 things I'm trying to do simultaneously. So,
hey, reselling and life in general are hard to keep up with. You know, you start adding anything to that equation, you know, just like what you got going on with your mom and just being married. I mean, just having a life, any sort, it's tough, man. It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about responsibilities, and not everybody has the same. We've all got responsibilities, but my responsibility level now is not the same as it was 5 years ago. And you compare across the plane between me and you, and say 15 other resellers, our level of responsibilities, the amount of them outside of our reselling platforms, our reselling, enterprise, is going to vary. There's been times in my life where if I would have made the decision to do what I'm doing, I could have probably concentrated 90% of my energy on reselling. And, there's times like now where, it may be 40%, or less that gets actually given to that. And I feel like that's why I was saying that. I feel like to take on something like Vendu before I start paying for a service, I feel like I need to have enough space in my day to make it worthwhile. Because if I decide to take it on and I make the first payment, and then it's 3 months before I get more than 10 or 15 items across, I've just wasted money, which kind of segues into part of our topic. We got to be cost wise with our decision making.
That's a cool word, segue. I've always liked that word.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's how my brain works. I hear something, it's gone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I agree though. We're on a roll. Let's go ahead and do another one of these awesome segments called Sell of the Week.
Let's do it.
Ain't that cool? I like all that coin stacking.
Yeah. Yeah, it did look better if all those gold coins were stacked in my coin can in my closet, but
Yeah. Hey, that's comment of the week. What are you doing?
Good job.
Technical difficulties.
Confuse the audience.
Sorry. So I didn't have a super week by no means, sales wise. And again, I just put all the blame on myself because my listing has been absolutely atrocious. But I did sell a vintage 1992 Mr. Christmas holiday carousel music box deal. Like you set up the carousel and you can turn it on and it'll spin and play music. And they're pretty well. Mr. Christmas stuff sells okay, most of it. Some of it's not as great, but if you find it still in good condition and working condition, it'll be okay. And that one was $75. So, and it wasn't in great condition by no means. If it would have been, in really, really good condition, it would have been over $100. Pretty easy. But yeah, that's my sale of the week.
That's not bad. So I've been working back through, old inventory, mostly over the last week or so. I say week or so. I've probably been about 2/3 that and about 1/3 listing some new stuff, but I've also been listing a lot. I've been listing clothing a good bit. I kind of go in spells. I'll list cause I've done a lot of music, and then I'll get tired of that. I'll move on to hard goods.
Hey,
that's
a good sound.
But going to hard goods, and I've been leaving my clothing, been building up, which I say building up. I've got a huge death pile of clothing, but the stuff that's at hand in the house was starting to build up. So I needed to work through some of that. And so I've gone through a couple of tubs of clothing that I had tubbed up, and nothing's, not a lot. I've had a few things that I've listed that's really high value, like I listed one of the coats that I got there, that big. I know I'm supposed to sell the week, and I promise I'm getting there. But one of the coats that I got from that big purchase I made at the local thrift store where I bought all the vintage clothes, the high-end clothes, and it was like this long kimono style Eileen Fisher boiled wool coat. And when I looked them up, I mean, the prices are kind of all over the place. They're good value. Worst case scenario is probably going to be $75, but there were sold comps in the $150 to $200 range. So I went ahead, since there's not very many listed like that style. It doesn't have buttons. It's just got like one snap up here, and it's got a tall collar, and it's like an extra long overcoat. But it's almost like the wool felt like they make hats, but it's not been steamed to make it like stiff. It's real soft. Anyway, but it's soft and it's thin, but it's in great condition. I listed it for $199. I figured I'd throw it high to start with and give it, since it's the season. and
Yeah.
kind of see what happens. And I've had a watcher and I've had quite a few views just within the first couple of days. So I feel pretty good that I'll probably end up getting an offer on it at some point. Anyway, I've had some good listings, but none of that stuff has sold. I sold a Magnavox DVD VCR combo as my best sell of the week. Sold for $58 plus shipping. I feel like maybe their value, there's some listed high and there's still a few higher sales. I feel like their value has slipped just a little bit. I feel like, when I first started, I've only been reselling a few years, like this. And I feel like the first ones I was getting, the Magnavox generally would do closer to $75. And there's some sales on there for that. But, these have been listed for a while, and I wound up taking an offer to move it because, it wasn't making sense. Keep trying to fight to get 10 extra dollars, out of it. I took the offer, and that was as far as value, that's my best sell of the week. I've sold a lot of low dollar sales going back through that clothing, drop prices just to move some stuff out. So things I had listed at 20, dropped them down to like $12, $13. And I made, I sold a good bit the first part of the week. I was kind of about to look at some of that before my phone dinged. That's what I was going to tell you or tell those that are listening. That was the weird thing about the weekend. It's usually the weekends are the better part for us, but then I had a pretty busy week as I've been going through that. I would,
Hey.
Yeah, that's the same one, I think. Just pay it.
Well,
yeah, I wouldn't an auto pay.
At least they paid.
Oh, absolutely. But I remember I packed, I think it's 15 or 16 items on Friday, but the value wasn't, super high because it was a lot of $10, $15, $20 sales. Yeah. I'm not complaining, it creates space. It's getting things out that need to go. They've been here too long.
Oh, 100%. So let's get to kind of what our topic, we talked about this a little bit before the show.
Yeah.
And you termed it a really good term for what we're going to talk about, cost saving decision making. And I like everything you had to say, and I'm going to turn you loose. I'm going to just turn you loose here in just a second. But I think just to preface what we're talking about on cost saving, especially for resellers, and I know this is true just because of the mindset we get in. If you're like me, you go to a yard sale and you buy all this stuff to sell and it has value, it's hard to keep it for yourself because you can make 30, 40, 50, 20, whatever it might be above and beyond what you bought it for. So it's hard to hold on to it. But I'm kind of like the same with what you said. I can't myself go on something like Poshmark. I have a hard time going to any clothing store and paying full price. Mm-hmm. I have a hard time buying anything full price unless I know that's the only way I'm going to get it.
Yeah.
Because I know with my reseller mindset that if I just chill out and wait, I'm probably going to come across something similar or that very thing. And to give an example, and then I'm going to turn the machine loose here.
Oh, no. You're good.
To give an example, my former pastor one time, he found out what I was doing. He said, hey, if you ever find, and I'll give you the specifics. He said, a Robin Air vacuum pump for air conditioning. He said, I'd like to have it if it's not too awful expensive. Yeah. And I'm like, I said, well, I don't even know what that is. I've never seen one. I said, but if I do, I'll holler at you. And I'm telling you, it wasn't a month later. We roll up on this yard sale. It's in the garage down from the house, more like an old shed barn, type deal. Walk in there and I see all these HVAC tools and I'm like, hey, this guy might actually have something. And I just stopped him and I said, you wouldn't happen to have a Robin Air vacuum pump, would you? He said, oh, I got two. I was like, what? Yeah. And he took me in this room where he had those types of HVAC tools. Mm-hmm. And the one I bought was like practically brand new for $75. So I emailed my old pastor and I'm like, hey, does $75 sound like a good deal to you? He said, that sounds great. And so I bought it and I took it to him and he was tickled plumb to death. But that's just an example. And I know that's even a little bit different about what we're going to go with this. But the point being, it's hard to pay full price for stuff when it's out there for less. And what I guess the direction we want to take this more so is being smart about how you spend money. But you go ahead, because you got.
And I think it applies in multiple areas, and that's what we were talking about before the show. It's when you're talking about cost saving decision making, and I promise I'm not trying to trigger anybody or you call anybody out. I feel like this is something, because I think that's how Caleb might have felt when I said this to start with.
Pull the trigger.
But you know,
Well, I mean, you did that while I had my $2.50 drink in my hand.
Yeah. But you know, the hardest person, it's always easier to hold everyone else accountable.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest person to hold accountable is self. So when it comes to cost, you know, it's one of those things, and this is kind of where my mind was on this. I realize there's resellers out there that are absolutely, they're killing it. They just, maybe they're in a niche where they're just a super expert. Maybe they're in an area where they have great access. They've made the right connections, and there's a chance for any and all of us to get there at some point.
Mm-hmm.
But in the larger community, when you talk to resellers, you know, most of us aren't walking around making 6 figures plus all the time, you know, making huge money. I'm not saying it's not possible. And there's a difference too. You understand, there's a big difference between having 6 figures worth of sales on that big number they give you and what your actual profit is, what you're putting in your pocket as a reseller. So don't let those numbers confuse you. There's a lot of people love to throw big numbers up there on the board, you know, and I'm,
stuff.
I'm all for, if you've got the cash flow to buy something for $300 and sell it for $5 and make $150 off of it, that's great. But eBay is going to show that as $500+ worth of sales on one sale. They're not going to account for the fact that you invested $300 in it when you put that number up on your screen. So if I went out and bought a whole bunch of items that were super expensive like that, I don't know why I'm going this way, but I'm going to just go with it since I'm there. But if you fill your store up with items like that, you could display huge 90-day numbers and not actually have enormous profits. And so sometimes some of us that are selling more mid-range items, say $20 to $50, $60 items, if we're only into them, like you said before, 5% of the cost or less, then we can have, at a much lower 90-day figure, still have the same or even better overall money made profitability than what someone maybe buying the bigger stuff does. So, I mean, there's two sides, two ways to look at it, you know, and it's not, there's no condemning either way of doing it. I mean, the goal is to make money. And so, you know, if someone's got the cash flow and there's a niche they're really familiar with and it's higher end items, they go to estate sales and they find those things and they're able to flip them and pocket $100 at a time, flipping bigger investment, but, you know, still make more power to them. That's great. But when we're watching online, be careful about that. And so I bring all that up for this. Most of us that are reselling, you know, I feel like whether it's part-time or full-time, you know, that actual yearly number is not enormous. So if you're looking at maybe the possibility of being able to do it full-time, you've got to really be cost conscious, because every decision that we make, and this is not only with reselling, but also in our, the drink, in our day-to-day, you know, decision making, or just living our life, it impacts our cash flow. It impacts our ability to, you know, pay our bills, our ability to be, you know, kind of feel a comfort level with our finances, not being that stress point. You know, that's one of the main things I think that drives some people that have attempted full-time reselling back to a regular job. And there's no shame in that either. But, you know, if it's so close, nip and tuck at the end of every month, that you're just feeling this, I mean, I don't blame anybody for saying, you know what, it's not worth feeling those feelings. But there's a lot of things I feel like we can do as resellers and as just good consumers to eliminate a lot of that. Because, you know, it's amazing to me. It's always been amazing how, and I've heard this said my whole life, you know, someone that makes $150,000 a year and never gains any wealth in doing that, that's because they're spending $150,000 a year. And then someone down the road from them, 600 yards or 3 miles, they make $40,000 a year and they never make any gains either, but they are able to make it and pay their bills off $40,000 a year. They live different. They're going to live different. The vehicle in their yard is going to look different. The house they're living in may be different, but it's decision making. So then that brings us to then kind of the crux of this is, how do we find a way to be able to take the income that we're making and create space for some positive momentum with that income? Because if we only ever live within the entirety of our means and don't choose to live below our means, then we'll never make any progress and we'll always be stressed out. You know, one of the reasons we were able to do, and it's not a pat on the back, I'm just saying literally we had to plan this. One of the reasons we were able to do what we've done is because we set our minds before we ever took on mom full time. We paid the car off. We paid the truck off. Everything that we could hold on to, and as far as decision making, we tried to hold on to and build the bank account up to have several months worth of, and I know that's not feasible maybe for everybody, but
Right.
look, here's the reality. And I think this is true. I really do think this is true. I think it really comes down to what sacrifices are you willing to make, because we all want to make excuses. Again, holding self accountable, the hardest part. And if all we ever do is make an excuse why we can't, then we'll never do anything. We'll never find the ability, whether it's, in our efficient practices as a reseller or in these cost saving decisions. And, it could be as simple as, choosing to use a box that was free over a box you paid for as many times as possible. Look, it's way more convenient to buy big stacks of boxes that are already pre-made. You just flip them together. And there is an argument to be made for time efficiency. I would never suggest digging through used boxes for an hour and a half trying to find the perfect box to fit, because in that hour and a half, the amount of items you can list are going to profit you more than the amount that you save on that one box. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But if you'll be smart even about the used boxes and kind of make you, just like we don't mix all of our purchase boxes together in one big stack and have to dig through them to find the right size. We got them. So they may not all be the same size, but you can put small boxes with small boxes, medium with medium, large with large, extra large with extra large on your used ones. If you'll kind of sort them when they first come in to start with, have them break them down where they lay flat, just put that time in then, or get someone else, if you got a spouse or a child in the house, I mean, that's something anybody can break down boxes for you. Get them to sort them out and store them the same way. Because like I said, every time you do that, you're putting $1.50 back in your pocket that you're not using a purchased box. Eliminating bad buys. I mean, I talked about this, I think, in a recent video, my last one I done. I talked about, or maybe it was last week on the podcast. I know I talked about it recently. This propensity we have to feel pressure to make a purchase, even when it's not a good purchase. When you're out and you spent most of your day trying to source, you haven't really found anything great. And then you get to feeling this because you've got all this, you got the time invested that you're not making money by listing or doing other things that are beneficial to your business. And our time is money. Our time is valuable. You've got the gas that you've burned, going here, there, and yonder, riding the roads, trying to chase stuff down. And there, it builds a pressure. Like, I've got to find something. But it's very easy to get yourself caught in this loop of making bad purchases because you just feel the need to make a purchase. And sometimes one of the best cost saving decisions you can make is just don't spend the money that you shouldn't spend when it comes to buying inventory. And, same way with packing supplies, we talked about this, anytime you can acquire packing materials, whether it's, used paper, used air pillows or bubble wrap or whatever. I mean, use that stuff. Don't discount that. Don't discount the importance of that, because every little bit of that you use saves you money. I think most people do a lot of those things. I think that's pretty common, but it is important. I think, like I said, the inventory thing, and then, boxes, but more, it's just about examining your practice, examining your spending. And I think a lot of this goes back not only to business choices. You don't want to spend an endless amount of time trying to save. It's kind of like driving an extra 10 miles to save 1 cent per gallon on your gas.
Yeah.
You by driving the 10 miles, right? Sometimes you spend an extra, like in my truck, right? You're going to spend another $2 in gas. So you eliminate the savings, plus that doesn't help you any. So, you might be able to go on Amazon and look for 4 hours and finally find tape, right? That's a few pennies less per roll for the same amount, as you don't. But if you really benefited yourself, you spent the time doing that when you could have done it, spent that time doing something else. So the cost benefit analysis to look at. But then we get to our expenditures. And I mentioned this to you, like, on a day when we're outsourcing, it's real easy. And I think me and my wife talk about this because, she works a regular job, goes to work every day. It's easy to get in these habits. Like I said, a convenience store is called a convenience store because of that. It's convenient. It's easy. It's a lot easier to not prepare ahead of time. It's a lot easier not to think beforehand. It's a lot easier just to make the quick stop and go in and grab what you want and then end up buying 3 other things that you didn't intend to buy in the process, So you go in and, you pay, like I said, $2 or $2.50 for a 20-ounce drink, when you could have maybe packed a little cooler with you that morning and brought some drinks that you bought at the grocery store or Walmart, right, and paid 50 cents to $1 for. And, you save money. All those little decisions matter. It don't seem like a lot, but the thing I think would benefit everyone is to look at those small decisions you make. It could be stopping to get your biscuit every morning. Well, this is my routine. Well, I deserve that. We like to think these things, and I'm not saying it's always bad. I'm just saying, if you look at how much of your income, your salary that you're putting out there into those type of expenditures, you sometimes might be very shocked at how much money it adds up to. And it's not the one thing, it's not just the twice that you buy a drink, but it's all through the week, every decision we make. I mean, anytime we can make decision A versus B, when we choose to buy, generic versus name brand and save $1 on that product, every decision we make has a financial consequence. They all seem small. I go back, you think about the old adage from Ben Franklin, a penny saved is a penny earned. And not many of us would even stop to bend over and pick up a penny on the parking lot if we was walking by. Nobody would hardly do that anymore. And I get it, but it's not about the actual literal application of it. It's the bigger idea. If in every place in your life you choose to make decisions that save you $1 here, $1 there, and then you think about, okay, you talked about the drinks. If you have two people in the car sourcing all day long on Friday and Saturday, and both of you get 2 drinks and a couple of snacks every time that you're out, well, that's what, $5 each on the drinks each day. So that's $10, $20 on drinks, and say another $5 each day for snacks. So that's, say, $30 for the weekend. And you do that, 30 weekends a year, well, that's what, $900.
Mm-hmm.
That's $900 spent on snacks and drinks when you could have thrown some peanut butter crackers, a bag of chips, things you get from Walmart or the grocery store, where, you can get the family size bag of chips for the price of the little bag, at the gas station,
Oh,
or like
yeah.
50 cents for the cold drink. And you just throw an ice pack in the fridge. I need to stop, I know, but the point is look at it in the long haul. Look at it in the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
Look at the big picture. If you only look at it through a narrow lens, you'll never see how it affects your finances. But if you'll look at it as it adds up and how it balloons by the end of the year, you add all these little parts of your life up, all these little decisions that you make. And it's like, I told my wife, I can't tell you how many times we've been on our way back from town, having to run to town to pick up a few items for groceries. And, we're on the way back. I'm like, I'm thirsty. Let's just grab a drink right quick. Okay. We stop, we go in the gas station, we grab a drink, we wind up getting a snack too. We come out, we spent $7. And I promise you, I can't tell you how many times by the time we got back to the house, there was that much of the drink. The top got popped on it. There was one sip taken out of it. And 25 minutes later, we're rolling up in the driveway. We weren't that thirsty.
Yeah.
It sure got $7 out of us. And we had plenty of stuff at home that was already paid for, already in the budget, that we didn't have to lose that $7 that day. And like I said, you add that up over the course of the year, and it can be thousands of dollars out of your salary that you're working really hard, or out of your reselling, right? You're reselling what you're making off of that. Your profits just going out the door.
Well, if you follow Dave Ramsey at all, he uses that very analogy of if you stop and buy a Coke, or you stop and buy a pack of cigarettes, or you stop and buy whatever, every day, like you said, your routine.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, if you spent $5 a day, he did the math, $5 a day from 18 to 62, I think it is, that if you took that money and invested it in good growth mutual funds, you would be a millionaire.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
What you're talking about is not just nickels and dimes, it's real money, and it's all about, the way we would say, is being good stewards. God calls us to be good stewards, which means wise with our money. We're not always meant to sit on it and never use it. That's not what he meant. There's times to use it. There's times we should spend. There's times we should save. There's times we should give. That's all true. But you got to keep all those in perspective, in their proper priority, in their proper place. And I think it reflects a lot too, I don't want to make anybody mad, but if you spend a lot on you, and I'll just say me, here I am, spend a lot on you and not anything on others, that speaks of your heart. So, if I'm stuck on me all the time, that says something. It speaks volumes. You got to be careful,
And sometimes it's not desire. I mean, I feel that for some people. Sometimes it's not like they don't have a desire in their heart to want to be able to do those things. But again, we've got to make decisions sometimes, especially there is a point. There's a reason why they have a poverty line in our country. And I realize there's probably people that listen to us that are riding close to that. I've been very close to that many times in my life. I understand what that's like. Trust me.
Yeah, there's no judgment what I said.
No, I remember for years when I first entered the workforce. I mean, before I get the next, I got paid once a month teaching, and I mean, here I was with a college degree. I took a pay cut to leave the sawmill, working at a sawmill, to go work in a classroom as a professional. So you can say what you want about, well, college this and that and the other, but I'm saying I had a sawmill job. Sawmill and logging jobs are not the premier jobs in Alabama. Those aren't the ones you go to when you want to make the most money. I had to take a pay cut to leave that and go to the classroom in Alabama when I first started teaching. That's how big the income disparity was. And look, I know I wasn't working the same number of days a year. I know all that stuff. I'm not talking about the money, but it don't matter when you can't pay your bills. Right. The total income coming in for the year is still what determines how you pay your bills.
Yeah, and everything looks good on paper, but what matters is what you have in your hand.
So I'm saying I know, because when I made that transition, and for many years after that, you learn to live within the means that you have, but we had to make adjustments. Those first months, man, it was tough. I mean, getting down to the last $100, and we weren't going out. Look, I didn't have a cell phone until I was probably like 35 years old. We didn't have satellite TV until like 2010. We didn't have a bunch of extra bills. We weren't living in a luxurious place. I bought a used trailer for $4,000. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was well used. I had to go in and replace floors, work on cabinets, redo bathroom. I mean, it wasn't like, we didn't start saying, oh, we got to have it all. We just got to have it all and have super nice stuff. I mean, our vehicles were used vehicles that we could get for less than $5,000. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were already making I felt like, and a lot of people are there doing everything we could to cut costs everywhere we could cut them. Yep. And it still took nearly. So I know there's a line at which it just takes everything you make just to kind of get by. And I see that still in my family. I mean, I've got an uncle and aunt I'm super close to, and I don't know exactly what their income is, but I know they're both retired. They're both just, fixed income. And it's amazing to me because I know it's somewhere around probably like $1,400, $1,500 a month. Mm-hmm. And they've got, their truck, car, couple of tractors, house, shed, 10 acres of land. They grow garden. They do all this stuff. Now they don't run the roads all the time. They can't afford to run the roads. Yeah. But they never ask for a dime. They never ask for a dime for anything. And they make a tiny fraction of what, a lot of families. And I know that when you got kids, you got more costs. Well, sure you do. I agree. But, still, most of it is still decisions, what we choose to spend, what we don't choose to spend on. Mm-hmm. We set those boundaries. We set those expectations. We're the one that established those. And the decisions we make matter. It matters. But, if you work a job, what you said, I guess to get back to that, and I need to hush again. If you work a job where you should have the leftover money to be able to do for someone else, there's nothing feels better than being able to, and not to get a pat on the back. It's best to do it the best you can to where they don't even know. If you can do it where they don't even know you helped, and that's the best way you could ever do it, where only you and God know. I mean, you want to do something right and do it where it's pleasing in His eyes. You make sure the only two people that know are you and God. Absolutely. I mean, and at the very least, do it to where the least possible attention given to self at all. But there's nothing more rewarding than being able to make decisions to position yourself in such a way that even if you don't have to be rich to be able to give. The widow in the Bible, she gave one mite, and it was her entire substance. It was literally all she had when she gave it. Now, that doesn't mean she's not going to have another mite down the road. But at that point, she looked at her entire account, her entire wealth, and said, okay, I'll just give it all. And there were others that gave much more, but it was just a fraction of a really large amount that they own. And the Bible said that she gave more than all of them because she gave up. There's nothing better and nothing more fulfilling than being able to position yourself to where you can do those things. It's not always, with Dave Ramsey, it's usually about getting yourself out of debt and building for your own future and all that. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying we shouldn't be wise stewards because that's part of it. Mm-hmm. But you hit the nail on the head. More important than anything else, man, if we can position ourselves to be a benefit to the rest of our family, to our kids down the road, to our elders in our family that maybe are struggling, like my uncle and aunt. I mean, I'd like nothing better than to be able to help them when they need help before they need help, if that makes sense. Yeah. Before they're in a tight, because I'm being wise of what God's given me. Mm-hmm. that matters more than anything.
Oh, I absolutely agree. Absolutely. Well, we hope that helped you guys. We hope that something we said there. I mean, and there's a lot of wisdom there. We don't want to keep harping on it, but but a lot of wisdom in, doing things the right way. I will say this before we get off of that. A lot of people don't see the bigger picture. They say, well, it just never pans out. It never pays off. But if you keep just chipping away,
Yep.
just you keep hitting that rock, it may just be a little dust fly, a little chip fly here.
Yeah.
But eventually that rock's going to crack, and eventually that rock's going to bust. Eventually you're going to get there. So don't quit. Don't give up.
Yep.
Keep going, and you'll get there. It takes time. I'm a testament.
Yeah.
It takes time. I was thinking about this. I always wanted to have land. I said, if God will ever bless us with land, that's what I'd like to have. And then we got to move out here, and I got a couple acres, and that satisfies me. Like I don't need 100 acres. I don't need 1,000 acres. I don't need 50 acres. Just enough that I can just kind of breathe, spread out a little bit. And it took me till 41 years old. That's not a problem. I've got a lot of life to go if the Lord wills,
Yeah.
Maybe I'll live till 80. And our problem is we don't like to wait. We've been desensitized to that. We've been programmed to get it right now.
Yeah.
I tell people it's like the drive-through lifestyle.
Yep.
You can roll up to the window, order what you want, get gone, and you're done. Life don't work that way, though, because you got to spend time, make wise decisions, put some effort into it. You got to show that you're disciplined enough to get to where you want to get to.
Yep.
And it just takes discipline, time, effort, wisdom, all that.
Exactly. You think about things like, think about how much money, and I mean, I look back and I think, there's no telling how much money I've already paid in interest for vehicles and on my home and things like that over just my short few years, it seems like, of having been an adult, where I've made loans and stuff. And so, you think about this, you said chipping away. And I thought, some people, it's hard to see getting anything paid off, anything. And I don't follow Dave Ramsey. We've talked about him a lot on here. I know a little bit about him. I've heard a lot said about him. I have seen him on TV, obviously, right? But I'm not like following hard after it. I've never did any of the programs or just sat down and listened to him for hours, nothing like that. But I find that when the people that have, it's a common sense approach to life,
That's all it is, common sense.
Like you take your vehicle, you think about how much interest you pay over the term of because now they want to finance one for 7 or 8 years, even if it's used. And so you say, well, I can't pay it off early. Well, I mean, if you have an extra $100 to put toward it at the end of the month,
do it.
Put the extra 100, the extra 50. Because here's the reality. If you say, well, I don't want to do it till I have a full payment. Well, if you take that approach, you're probably never going to have an extra full payment. It's because that $100 is going to go somewhere else in 2 weeks. And then you're going to be back to the same place. You get to the next month, you're going to only have $50. But if you'll pay what extra you can each month, chip away at it, you'll be shocked, at how much sooner that thing will pay off, or how quickly you may be able to get it down to where after 4 years, assuming you get a, federal, I mean, everybody does their taxes differently. But for those of us that pay in extra to make sure we don't have to pay, when you get that refund that comes back, you may find that the refund's enough to finish paying it off 1 year, finally you get out from under it. So then what do you do? Well, you've been able to make that $400 or $500 payment monthly, every month without fail. You've been able to do it every month. And now suddenly, instead of putting that $500 in the bank so that when the vehicle does go out and you need a new one, we find something else that we've been wanting to go spend the $500 on, whether it's to go make another bill or just spend an extra $500 every single month and it never be there. But if you'll put that money in the bank, start saving that amount, like I said, whether it's retirement, and give some of it. You want to really see it prosper, give a portion of that to somebody else.
That's the way.
But start putting it back. Start putting back, and then you'd be shocked. 2 years down the road, when it's time to go get a new vehicle, between trading in and what you got in the bank, you may not even have to borrow any money.
That's true.
So you can end that cycle if you approach it the right way. You really can. You can end a lot of those cycles, but you got to be determined, and you got to be willing to. You got to deny yourself some things. Sometimes. I mean, you can't just go in the store and say, "I want," and I'm going to have it no matter what, or you'll never get there. You
That's
have
all you'll ever have.
Choices. Yeah,
that's all you'll ever have. That's true. All right. Are you ready to be co-loser of a dad joke battle?
I hope mine's better than that this week. I don't know.
We're gonna find out.
I got a couple that I like. I don't know how they're gonna like them, but we'll see.
Well, we didn't get a single vote either way.
Yeah, I got a vote.
You got a vote.
I sure did.
You got a vote, and then we both got a "you're a loser" vote.
Yeah.
So I guess you technically win.
Oh,
technically,
you're really admitting it too. How about that?
Just barely. Just barely. By the skin of your teeth did you win. Okay. Anyway. All right, here we go. You ready?
Go.
All right. Well, since I'm the loser, I'll go first, I guess. So in a Catholic school, and if I told this joke, I'm going to apologize right off the bat. This is the last one. Okay, this is the last one. Then I've got to refill. So if I told it already, I won't be telling it again. And this will be the last time. But anyway, in a Catholic school cafeteria, a nun places a note in front of a pile of apples. It says, "Only take one. God is watching." Further down the line is a big old pile of cookies. A little boy makes his own note that says, "Take all you want. God is watching the apples."
That's good stuff.
I like it.
Yeah, I don't think you hadn't told that one. I'm pretty sure. I usually my curse is not being able to forget things I want to forget sometimes, you know.
I can't remember nothing.
So here's mine. It's funny. I mean, I wasn't trying to. It's funny that you went there, but so a drunk man staggers into a Catholic church. He goes into the confessional booth, sits down. He doesn't say anything. Priest coughed a few times, tried to get his attention. The drunk continued just to sit there. So finally, the priest began beating on the side of the wall. You know, hit it 3 times really hard, and the drunk mumbled, "Well, ain't no use knocking. There's no paper on this side either."
Oh gosh! Oh my goodness! You win. Oh, that's pretty good. I like that.
It's hard to beat a good poop joke, you know.
Good old poop joke. I think Trash to Cash will be proud of you this week.
I don't go that far. No, sir. Now they do like to talk about some excrement and flatulence and things, though, for sure.
Here and there. Yeah.
Easters and various things.
They've been, possibly known to play a few things here and there.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Okay, well that'll do it.
That's it. Yeah,
that's a good place to stop.
Caleb needs to go drink some milk now.
I gotta go to the bathroom. Make sure my stall's adequately supplied. All right. Appreciate you guys once again. Episode 73. Appreciate you being here with us. Until next time.
Oh, special guest coming up in a couple of weeks. We forgot to say that. Sorry.
Tell them who it is.
Yeah, Troy, Mountain Man Treasure.
Mountain Man Treasures.
November the 4th will be our recording day, so it'll be what, the 5th?
That'll be
the day it comes out. 7th. Yeah, so it'll be the one on November 7th, that episode, that Thursday. I mean,
it's not next. It's next week's show. Yeah.
Yeah.
So next week, that is correct. Yes, actually, next week, Troy, Mountain Man Treasure, will be on with us. Yeah. Give the 2 old guys some credit that we figured that out that quick.
Wish we would have said it at the beginning, but it is what it is. We'll make sure we announce it on Instagram too, get it out there. So, but looking forward to that. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.